The views and opinions expressed in this program do not necessarily represent those of Natural Bridges Media or KSQD's staff, volunteers, or underwriters.
Hello and welcome to Talk of the Bay. I am your host, Len B.A. And with me today, my guest is Adam Scow. Adam Bolaños Scow is a public interest advocate, violinist, and music teacher. For over 15 years, Adam has helped win environmental campaigns in the Monterey Bay region, including the efforts to ban fracking in Santa Cruz, Monterey, and San Benito Counties. He is a co-founder of the Campaign for Organic and Regenerative Agriculture, a grassroots group working to transition agricultural fields away from toxic pesticides to organic in the Watsonville area. He has served on the boards of Regeneración Pajaro Valley Climate Action, Watsonville Wetlands Watch, and the Sierra Club. He previously served as a board trustee for the Pajaro Valley Unified School District, where he helped win one of the largest salary increases for teachers and staff in the history of the district, and protected vital arts and music programs. As a violinist, Adam performs with the Santa Cruz Symphony and also performs mariachi music with Mariachi Libertad. Adam teaches both orchestra and mariachi through the award-winning El Sistema program in Watsonville and at Cabrillo College. Adam Scow, welcome to Talk of the Bay.
Len, great to be here. Great to see you.
Thanks for being here. I know you've been involved in these efforts that are underway right now to try to reduce the use or eliminate the use, really, of pesticides in the fields in Pajaro Valley. And so I wanted to start just digging into that subject. You know, despite growth in demand and production for organic fruits, vegetables, and fibers, the majority of U.S. production still uses pesticides. In this region, with all the production in the Pajaro Valley, Salinas Valley, and the North Coast and other areas, what is the level of pesticide use right now?
Well, we have a robust agricultural sector here in Santa Cruz County in the south end, the Pajaro Valley, where Watsonville is located. And we're blessed with an amazing climate, one of the greatest climates in the world to grow fruits and vegetables, especially berries. The climate around Watsonville is exceptionally perfect to grow berries, and it's the reason why it's one of the berry growing capitals of the world. It is the headquarters of the biggest berry company in the world, known as Driscoll's. Everybody knows that name. And we've seen a surge in the production of berries, strawberries, raspberries, blackberries in the last 10, 15, 20 years. And the latest ag report from the county showed even growth last year in berries. The problem we have is that berries that are grown conventionally use some of the worst toxic pesticides, and they use a lot of them right around our schools, our homes, and some of these pesticides are fumigant gases that cause cancer that can drift for miles. And we have a lot of health problems in the Watsonville area, no doubt as a result of the use of these pesticides. At the same time, Santa Cruz County is a leader in organic production. In fact, the organic standard, as defined by the United States Department of Agriculture, which you see at the grocery store, that's not just an opinion as to what it's
USDA organic.
That is actually a legally binding standard. That standard was largely developed in Santa Cruz County by UC Santa Cruz researchers and farmers around Watsonville. And so it's estimated that about 20% of the farmland in Santa Cruz County, Pajaro Valley, is organic, but 80% is not, and the 80% that is not uses a lot of the worst toxic pesticides.
Yeah, and how close to schools are these fields that are treated with pesticides?
Some of the fields are 20, 30 feet. They're right behind playgrounds, right behind tracks. We're talking about 13 schools. Some of them include McQuitty Elementary and Soldo Elementary, Bradley Elementary, Ohlone Elementary, Pajaro Middle School. There's fields right behind Pajaro Middle School, right behind them. And it's a big concern that a lot of these fields are not farmed organically. And there's dozens and dozens of toxic pesticides. Every year, growers have to release lists of possible pesticides they will use that year. And the list can have up to 80, 90, 100 pesticides.
Really, from a single grower.
Parcel. Yeah, from a single parcel. And the berries are by far use the most toxic pesticides. And there's more and more awareness about that. Even our friends at Environmental Working Group have published the Dirty Dozen that shows these pesticides sometimes end up in the fruit. Berries don't have a skin like apples, so whatever is being applied to the soil and to the fruit can be absorbed by the strawberry, the raspberry, the blackberry.
Right.
So,
and I know that they've done tests on women's mother's milk, and found pesticides. Virtually every American woman who's ever breastfed has pesticides in her own milk. So it's getting into us.
It's getting into us. And Santa Cruz County, according to some of the state data, we have one of the highest childhood cancer rates in the state. We have nearly 20% of our students in the Pajaro Valley Unified School District are in special education, which is nearly twice as high as the state average of 10%. Wow. It comes at a huge toll to the school district's resources and families who are dealing with these problems. Studies from UC Berkeley, UCLA, and other institutes have shown these pesticides, Telone, chloropicrin, things made by Dow Chemical, Bayer, Monsanto. These chemicals, once they get in to pregnant women, they can cause learning disabilities, respiratory problems, and other strange cancers. That's what these studies have found. So we feel it's only reasonable and common sense and responsible that these companies make an effort to transition more of their fields to organic. That's why we started Cora. It was about a dozen of us 5 years ago that took a survey of the scene of the regulations and the efforts going on in Sacramento. And there's been efforts in Sacramento for many years, folks battling these issues, trying to reduce the amount of pesticides, get some pesticides banned just to see them replaced by another toxic pesticide. And so we said, well, why don't we just have more of this farmland go organic? Why fight one pesticide at a time? By definition, by legal standard, most of these toxic pesticides cannot be used in organic farming. And you can have some guests in here to talk about sustainable agriculture, biodynamic, regenerative, and we can have a great conversation. But a lot of that, and while I agree with a lot of those points, organic is not just an opinion. So while it's not perfect, it's way, way, way better than what's going on in the conventional fields when it comes to toxic pesticides. So that's why we say let's have a movement pushing the companies to go organic around Watsonville. Yeah,
well, and especially when it's within reach of these schools, because it's inevitably it's going to get into the air or into the soil right next to where the fields are. So
absolutely. Well, when you drive by Watsonville, Salinas, Castroville, you'll see these gray plastic tarps covering the fields, especially this time of year, August, September, October. This is typical fumigation season when the companies are actually injecting toxic gases into the soil in order to sterilize everything. They're trying to kill everything that might affect the plant. So the soil just ends up being there to hold up the berry plant. And really they're farming here because the weather's so perfect.
Yeah.
But they're actually trying to kill everything in the soil. And over time, that's going to have consequences for the health of the soil, naturally. So those gases can leak, they can escape, they can drift whichever way the wind's blowing. And so naturally, the fields and the neighborhoods right by the fields are most impacted. They can't spray one regulation says they can't spray during school hours, but they can spray at evening. And they usually spray at evenings and on the weekends. And folks still live right by the schools, too, even if their kids aren't in school. So this is something that needs to change. And so it's a campaign. It's an effort. We are pushing Driscoll's, by far the biggest berry company, but others as well, to transition those fields. We've identified about 13 fields around Watsonville area schools where we would like them to start immediately, beginning or transition to organic.
Yeah, and there are organic strawberry growers, and a number of them right right here in Santa Cruz County, and Driscoll's themselves markets organic berries
Yes.
At a somewhat higher price than the non-organic.
Yes.
So we know it's possible. And we know it's possible for them to grow organic. That seems there could be no argument about that.
Driscoll's themselves is estimated to be about 20% organic in the Pajaro Valley. They have organic growers and farmers. Mm-hmm. They are making money selling organics. Their newest CEO did an interview saying, yes, the organic market is growing. What we're told by industry experts is that the reason why we haven't seen more progress is because they believe they can still give greater yields from using the chemicals, the toxic chemicals. In other words, if all you care about is making as much money and profit as possible, you're just going to use the chemicals, grow as much as you can, and fulfill contracts all over the world. See, Driscoll's at its heart is a distribution company. They control their growers, but Driscoll's controls contracts with all the biggest retail stores in the country and perhaps the world. The berries that are grown around Watsonville are not just obviously for our local consumption.
No, I have walked into a grocery store in Philadelphia and been able to buy Driscoll's berries. So
Driscoll's berries are all over the world. They go to China, they go to New Jersey, they go to Japan, they go to Russia, they go to France, they're in Morocco, they're in 3 parts of Mexico. And it's common for big ag companies, whether they're in the Midwest or California, to brag that their products go all over the world. And isn't that so wonderful? Well, if you're at the top of the company and you're making hundreds of millions of dollars, it is wonderful for you. Driscoll's is a $4 to $5 billion company estimated and growing. But if you live by these fields where they're using toxic chemicals, if you're a farm worker working in the fields and having to send the kids to the same schools that are right by the toxic fields, it's not as wonderful. And it's not as wonderful for our environment and our soil health as well. So if you're at the top of the company, you're certainly winning. I don't know about the rest of us.
Right. Yeah, and you mentioned, there's a higher cancer rate in Santa Cruz County, most of that concentrated in South County, and we've got a higher than average number of students requiring special ed. What are some of the effects that have been observed for students and staff that are exposed to pesticides? Do we have specifics?
Well, it's very hard to prove because there's so many chemicals in the air. From not just the pesticides, there's dozens of chemicals. And the way they report the chemical use, they report years after they actually apply it on a specific field. They disclose it a couple of years later. And they've been doing this for years and years. So we know what they're using, but it's legally very, very hard to prove a specific application caused a specific health problem in a specific individual. However, we who live around Watsonville know that tons of horror stories of kids with rare cancers, teachers who have died from cancer, or strange cancers, like not just the common ones, but bone cancers, things that are rare. And many of these teachers' families have to go to Stanford Medical Center because it requires such sophisticated care, they have to go up there. We even have an organization in Watsonville called Jacob's Heart, dedicated to serving kids and families with childhood cancer. And most of the kids are coming from Watsonville and Salinas, and they take them to Stanford. And I have a friend who's a teacher. She's been up to Stanford. She just got diagnosed with breast cancer. And she says the doctors in Stanford are seeing more and more cancer cases coming from our region. And we've seen more and more pesticides with the berry growth. So there's no doubt. We know scientifically that the chemicals that are being used are carcinogens. They cause respiratory problems. They cause all sorts of health problems. There's no doubt about that. And they've more and more of them are being used right around our homes and our schools. There's consequences. We're seeing that. And that's why we're advocating for this change.
If you're just tuning in, my guest is Adam Bolaños Scow. He's a public interest advocate, a violinist, and a music teacher. He is a co-founder of the Campaign for Organic and Regenerative Agriculture, a grassroots group working to transition agricultural fields away from toxic pesticides to organic in the Pajaro Valley. So, Adam, I know there's regulations about the use of the pesticides. To what extent are those regulations actually being enforced, and to what extent are they not sufficient in your view?
the regulations are mostly insufficient. The chemicals are so toxic, are so poisonous, that their use and their presence around our homes or schools, this is the problem at hand. The regulations pretend that there are safe amounts. However, the state has been very pro-pesticide. We have a campaign finance system, as your listeners know, based on bribery, which is legal in this country, where companies give money, whether they're the berry companies or the pesticide companies like Dow Chemical and Bayer. I mean, some of these pesticides were developed by Nazis to kill people. And some of these pesticides today are still made in Germany and are not allowed to be used in the European Union, are solely made for the American market, right. Whether they're here in Watsonville or in Iowa. Iowa is one of the only states that has a rising cancer rate, actually, because of the massive use of fertilizers with toxic poisons and chemicals. And so the regulatory system in the state and of the federal government wants us to believe that these chemicals are safe if they're just used appropriately and wisely. And that's proving to be false. And common sense could tell us that, but when we're seeing with the health impacts on our people, and when we see that the companies and the state have a vested interest, the State Department of Pesticide Regulation, DPR, that's the state of California, portion of their budget comes from approving pesticide sales, pesticide use. We have a very corrupt system, something called regulatory capture. And so that's why we started Cora. We just said, well, we could play this game with the state where they take so a few years ago, they took methyl bromide, another toxic chemical, and the state said, okay, we're not going to do that anymore. And a bunch of activists said, yay. And then next thing you know, it was replaced with chloropicrin, a toxic tear gas invented in World War I to gas people. And so not much of a victory. And so there's this endless game of replacing one toxic pesticide with another. Just seems kind of silly, especially when we know we can grow food organically. We grew food organically for hundreds of years as a society, an agrarians all over the world. Right. When you really think about the
thousands of years.
Thank you. Yeah, I was get my history.
That's all right.
And when you think about the original and concept, when people use the word organic, it was really about rotating crops. You don't just grow one thing on one parcel of land all the time. You're going to get problems. And for those familiar with Mexican agriculture, we have something called milpa, which means you're rotating corn, squash, and beans to always regenerate the soil. In organic strawberry production, small organic growers will rotate strawberries with greens, marigold flowers, and we have some of that going on around Watsonville. Even Driscoll's themselves has fields that they rotate between Lakeside Organics. Lakeside Organics is a very successful organic farming company, also based in Watsonville.
Right.
They have a restaurant called California Grill. That's a diner with all organic vegetables. 2,000 acres of organic vegetables, leeks, kale, you name it, carrots, broccolini. Very successful company. And some of these fields, they rotate between the greens and organic strawberries from Driscoll's. So that's a great example of real organic farming and companies working together, and that's what we need to see more of. Now, Driscoll's will make less money off that particular parcel because they're not putting a bunch of toxic chemicals and just nothing but berries like some of their other fields.
Right.
But they're still going to make money off organics. There's no question about it. They're still going to be fine, and that's an example of something
just
that's already
maybe not
working.
as much per acre, but
Correct.
It's still there. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
And farm workers are also exposed to these pesticides.
The most.
What do they report about their exposure?
Well, the farm workers are told next to the nothing or the bare minimum about their exposures. I mean, many of the farm workers are recruited here to work for companies, berry growers that work in the berry industry. That's sometimes a narrative that gets lost among all the misinformation and disinformation about immigration and farm workers. Actually, the farm workers were usually recruited here to come work, and that's how this system is designed. The farm workers are here to help make money for companies like Driscoll's. That's what's going on here. My grandfather was a farm worker. He was a bracero farm worker from Mexico, and he was able to leave the industry and become have his own small business. But this has been a cycle of economic taking advantage of a situation and taking advantage of immigrants, and so they are the most exposed. They are here to work. If they are here and their papers are in question, which is often the case, and that's also by design. Is anybody going after Driscoll's for hiring undocumented people? No. This is how the system works.
Right.
And so, but that also puts them at a disadvantage, and they're not going to be able to take advantage of any rights, and they're going to just have to be quiet and work, and they're kind of in a trap situation if you think about it. And so, when it comes to their exposure to pesticides, they're the most exposed, no question about it. They're there in the fields, then their kids go to the schools nearby, can get on their clothes, and there's a lot of different chemicals. The fumigants are maybe some of the worst, but there's about at least a couple dozen more that have health impacts.
Yeah, and anything that gets into the soil gets into the ground, and anything that gets sprayed on top gets into the air. So
yes,
it's there.
And once it gets in your lungs, it's going to your heart, your brain, your vital organs.
Yeah,
that's how it works.
And you mentioned there had been a long campaign to get rid of methyl bromide. How long have people been trying to get the use of pesticides near the schools stopped?
We've there was an effort to get them stopped during school hours, and so that regulation is in place where the pesticides can't be applied while the kids are in school between, I think it's 8 a.m. and 6 p.m. or 5 p.m., something like that. So that's a modest improvement. But when people live right by the schools and the chemicals can last for hours, if not days, and we see the use of pesticides go up as berry production goes up, there's not much to celebrate there. I mean, we need a bigger change. We need to reduce the amount of chemicals, pesticides in the air, period. And that's what an organic transition would give us. And so that's why we started Cora. I think we did our first event in 2021, and we've been building, getting more and more allies, more and more support from groups all over the county, not just Watsonville. We want folks helping all over the county. Obviously, City of Santa Cruz, North County has a robust appetite. People here are very pro-organic, which is great as consumers. But that's not enough to solve this problem, because when you're dealing with global markets and companies and politics, we need actual real pressure, citizen pressure, coalitions to put pressure on these companies and politicians to make a change.
So you've been working with Cora, the Campaign for Organic and Regenerative Agriculture, since its beginning. And I know there's a very active coalition of groups right now working to try and really push on this issue of getting the pesticide use stopped. What are actions that are going on right now, and how can people in the community get involved?
Absolutely. We're going to be offering more and more tours. We're also affiliated with the Center for Farm Worker Families. I know you're going to be speaking with Dr. Ann in just a second here as well. And so Dr. Ann has been a great leader in supporting the farm workers, really building healthy relationships, supportive relationships. So she's offered tours, farm worker reality tours over the years, which are very great. Highly recommend those. And we're going to be offering some pesticide reality tours so people can come see what's actually happening around Watsonville. They can see the fields with their own eyes right by the schools, right by the neighborhoods. We have a senior village, a working class, middle class senior village in Watsonville, where folks who can no longer afford to live in Santa Cruz, and it's one of the few places where you can buy a home. There's pesticide berry fields right by the senior village.
Wow.
Right next door,
Yeah.
In the backyard. So we want people to see this. We want people to care and help us with their energy. Money helps too, but energy, attention, dedication is what's going to make this change showing up. So our website is on the farmworkerfamily.org. That's the Center for Farm Worker Families website, farmworkerfamily.org, and you can see the Cora page there. We have a big map, an infographic map, with information about the fields, the pesticides, a lot of information. People can sign up there, connect with us, and we're going to invite you to tours and other ways to be involved in certain actions at times as well. We've had big actions, and we're going to need to have more of them, and with more and more people showing up.
Yeah, and I've had the privilege of going on a farm worker reality tour, and I can't recommend it enough. It's like we all eat the stuff that grows in the fields, of course.
Yeah.
But if you've never worked there or been around it when the work is going on, these reality tours are terrific. It's better than the best museum you've ever been to. You get some personal interaction. You get to actually visit fields where people are working. You get to see places where they live, and you get to hear their stories.
Yes.
And so it's so engaging and so educational, all at the same time. And I highly recommend it. That's farmworkerfamily.org. Sign up.
Yes.
All right. So I wanted to ask you also, Adam, are herbicides also an issue? I know we've got a lot of things to treat insects and worms and that kind of thing, but are herbicides much of an issue?
Let me ask you. There's some that are toxic and some that are more natural. So in the organic standard, there are organically approved herbicides and things that can be used, sulfur, that are not synthetic, that can be used to help mitigate pests. And so that is common in organic farming. So it kind of depends on the synthetic component of it, whether it's made at a toxic lab or if it's something more naturally occurring.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and a lot of these toxic chemicals are chemicals that really don't ever come into existence in the natural world. They have to be synthesized. There's no other way for them to exist. And they're combining components, molecular components that we don't understand all the long-term effects of, but we're certainly seeing evidence of a lot of health issues coming out of that. Well, we just have a half a minute left, so I want to thank you, first of all, Adam Scow, for coming in.
Yeah.
And if you would please tell us again how people can tie into this effort to reduce and eliminate pests.
Well, everybody's invited. We need everybody's help. This is not going to go away on its own. Just because we are right doesn't mean we have enough power to make the change yet. So we need people to get involved. Please come to the website, farmworkerfamily.org/Cora. We've gotten a lot more activism. A lot more people are stepping up, and we need you to join us. So thank you, Len, and thanks for listening.
Yeah. Thank you for coming in, and I look forward to hearing your music as well.
Thank you. Another show.
We're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back with Dr. Ann Lopez right after this. Don't go away. Welcome back to Talk of the Bay. I am your host, Len B.A., and my guest is Ann Lopez. Dr. Ann Lopez is the Executive Director of Center for Farm Worker Families. She is an emerita professor and taught courses in biology, environmental science, ecology, and botany in the biology department at San Jose City College for many years. She has a PhD from UCSC in environmental studies, where she studied the impact of the North American Free Trade Agreement on the farms of West Central Mexico. Her book, entitled The Farm Worker's Journey, summarizes the results, arguments, and conclusions of her research and was published by UC Press. She has been recognized for her work by the United States Congress and many organizations. She was chosen as Woman of the Year for 2013 and 2014 by the National Association of Professional Women. In March 2018, she was chosen for a 16th annual Cesar E. Chavez Community Award in Watsonville and as Woman of the Year by Mark Stone's 29th District for 2019. Ann Lopez, welcome to Talk of the Bay.
I'm happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Your organization is part of a coalition of organizations now that is pressing as hard as you can to stop the use of pesticides around schools and homes in the Pajaro Valley. We've seen pesticide use going on for many decades despite growth in demand and production of organic fruits, vegetables, and fibers. but it's still going on. How close to schools are the fields that are treated with pesticides?
Well, there's a map on our website, farmworkerfamily.org, that shows where the fields that use pesticides are being used right near schools. And to me, it's shocking, really. We have to, at some point, decide whether profits are more important than children's health. And the way we are behaving does not convince me that children are more important than profits.
Yeah, that puts it in simple terms. And we've seen, efforts to reduce pesticide use and to reduce exposure to pesticides. What's kind of our background at this point? What's happened in the state of California and in Santa Cruz County and Monterey counties particularly? Has anything really changed in terms of pesticide use or regulation?
Not really. There have been some positive signs, at least in Monterey County. Earth Justice has filed a lawsuit against the agricultural commissioner for not considering less toxic means of controlling pests. But, I'd like to emphasize the fact that pesticides are biocides. They kill life, and that means all life. And we have to ask ourselves, is this okay? And I say it's not, especially when there's good alternatives to pesticides. You can go on the Rodale Institute website and find a 30-year study where you can convert to organic regenerative agriculture, and very successfully, and even the UN has studies like that. Many of the pesticides in use today, like 1,3-dichloropropene, have been banned in 34 countries in the European Union. Why can't we ban it too? It's highly carcinogenic and toxic. It makes no sense to me at all. And that's why I say I think we have to have a reckoning. What's more important, life or profits?
And of course, we know that the companies involved in this production, the agricultural companies, and of course the pesticide companies, the chemical companies themselves, have a vested interest in the outcome of all of this. How are they involved in state and federal regulation? How do they influence what we're getting in terms of policies on pesticides?
Well, the organization or agency designed to control pesticides is the Department of Pesticide Regulation, which is overseen by the Environmental Protection Agency. And guess where the DPR gets its funding from? The pesticide industries.
Oh, that's actually the mechanism for their funding?
Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
Okay.
So if your support comes from the very industry that you're supposed to be working against, or at least phasing out, you're probably not too likely to push that real hard.
No kidding. That's yeah. And I know that some pesticides, for example, Adam mentioned that methyl bromide has been now banned, which was a fumigant used a lot in the strawberry fields, but it's been replaced with something that's equally toxic.
Yep.
So how does that figure into where we stand now and what you're trying to accomplish in the area?
Yeah, we want to convert all the farms in the Pajaro Valley to organic regenerative. Yeah, and in terms of pesticides being phased out and new ones appearing, this is pretty common. It's like, if we can't make money with this one, we'll generate another one, and who knows, it may be worse.
Right.
Yeah.
And so as you see it, then the organic and regenerative agriculture would completely eliminate that pesticide use, and then it essentially becomes mostly a non-issue, right?
Right. We don't need chemical pesticides to grow food.
Clearly, as there's a report from the Food and Development Institute showing that something like 2/3 of all food produced in the world is produced on smallholder farms, and less than half of those use pesticides.
Right.
So that's an indication that we do know how to do this without, and certainly the science of growing organically has evolved considerably just in the last 50 years. So.
Yes, exactly. And the casualties of pesticides are just disgraceful. I don't know how we live with it and do this to children. I really don't. The anomalies are incredible, including leukemia. Some of the farm worker families have to take their kids to Stanford for treatment regularly. Leukemia, bone cancer, brain cancer, learning and behavioral disabilities, ADHD, autism, etc. Again, is it worth it to do this? These are children. What kind of a civilization are we that we would do this to children?
Yeah. And farm workers are also exposed to these pesticides.
Yes.
What do they report about the effects of their exposure?
Well, one woman that's going to speak on the farm worker reality tour this weekend, she had to have her stomach removed. Yeah, and so there's any number of things depending on how the cancer manifests in the body. But farm workers are certainly the most exposed, and their children as well. It's like we're in a caste system where these are people that don't matter except to work in fields and produce a product. But in terms of their humanness, it's not recognized. And I think we need to reevaluate this. Yeah, because the suffering is immense. I am sick and tired of meeting families with children with these anomalies, and it's so common. I was shocked when I started my research. I mean, if you went around and knocked on doors in Santa Cruz, I don't think you'd find a whole lot of kids with these anomalies, but among the farm workers, it's just commonplace.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they're risking their health just to be able to make a living.
Yes, and their children's health. Right.
Yeah. And how long have people been trying to get this use of pesticides near the schools stopped?
Gee, I don't have data on that, but it's been a while for sure. Yeah, and there's been more and more protests. I think more and more people are coming out. And when people come on our farm worker reality tours, they learn about all of this, and many of them are shocked. They had no idea that the laws were so loose about it. Yeah.
Yeah, so I know some of this is anecdotal, but what kinds of experiences have you heard about people getting exposed to the pesticide use when they're either working or at the schools, or, because this affects obviously not just the children, not just the farm workers. It affects staff, students. It affects people who live in the neighborhoods around the same areas. You've probably heard quite a few stories about the pesticide use practices. I wonder if you could tell us some of those stories.
Well, just recently, a woman who lives in the senior village that gets exposed in Watsonville came down with breast cancer, and I guess had to have her breast removed. I mentioned the woman that lost her stomach, and then by McQuitty High School, where there are fields that spray nearby, several teachers have gotten cancer and had to quit.
Wow.
It's just commonplace, unfortunately. And children, like I mentioned, or teenagers. I remember seeing on the corner of Riverside and Main Street a woman with a big poster and little pockets glued on the poster asking for donations for funeral expenses because her grandson, who was 15, just passed away from melanoma.
Wow.
So, yeah,
At 15.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous.
Totally.
Yeah.
Like I said, what are we doing? Is this how we want to treat children?
Yeah, I spoke to someone who taught school in Pajaro District in the 90s, and she said that they were trying to get pesticide use near the schools stopped back
Right.
then. So
Yes.
this has been going on for at least 30 years and probably longer. So there's a campaign now that's been getting going with a number of organizations involved. And I know Omar Dieguez of Barrios Unidos
Yes.
was on a fast for a full month
Right.
to bring attention to this issue. What are the organizations that are involved, and what are you trying to get accomplished in the near term?
Well, I feel like our role mostly at Center for Farm Worker Families is to expose what's going on, the truth of what's going on to the public, because most people don't know. So we focus on education with the Farm Worker Reality Tours. I speak everywhere about this issue, and I think it's really important for people to recognize that especially Latino school children are 3.2 times more likely than white students to attend schools with the highest use of the most hazardous pesticides. And the disparity is most notable in the Pajaro Valley. And this is clearly an example of environmental racism. You would not find this in North County. And there needs to be more attention directed to this and to stop it. Stop this. We don't need these pesticides.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I imagine if you asked anyone who lives in, say, Aptos or Santa Cruz or for that matter, Monterey Peninsula, anywhere, hey, how would you feel about if the field next, the block over from your house was getting sprayed with pesticides on a regular basis? You ready to sign off on that?
Yeah.
I don't think
Yeah.
very many people would say, oh, no problem. And yet this is what's going on in the Pajaro Valley and to some extent in the Salinas Valley as well. On a regular basis.
And that's because farm workers don't matter. That's the way they're treated. They don't matter. If we valued their lives and they were capable of filing lawsuits and all the things people do to rebel against injustice, things would be different. But it's really, most of them are undocumented in the Pajaro Valley, and so they can't risk making any noise about their situation, especially now with ICE.
Oh, yeah. So there's still a significant portion of farm workers who are undocumented.
Oh,
at this
yeah.
point.
Most of the ones in Pajaro Valley, I think, are undocumented.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you can imagine what would happen to the farms if they all disappeared.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And so somehow or other, apparently that area has been is not getting the same attention as, for example, Portland or Washington, D.C. or Chicago right now.
Right. Well, I think some of the growers are too wealthy, and that probably has something to do with it.
They have a little influence there.
Yes.
Well, for listeners who may have just tuned in, I'm talking with Dr. Ann Lopez. She is the executive director of the Center for Farm Worker Families. She's an emerita professor from San Jose City College with a PhD in environmental studies. And in her original graduate research, she studied the impact of the North American Free Trade Agreement, I think you all might remember that, on the farms of West Central Mexico. So, Anne, I wanted to ask a little more. You've talked about the environmental racism that plays a role in allowing this continued pesticide use and the negative health effects to go on in particularly the Pajaro Valley. What is the percent now? Where do we stand in terms of the number of farm fields that are organic and the ones that are not, and how would you propose shifting that?
Well, what I have heard is we're 30% organic in Santa Cruz County. And I think the only way to shift that is to have the public out on the streets complaining, boycotting, not buying the products these companies sell, just like what Cesar Chavez did with the grape strike. Yeah, I think it's a similar thing. Yeah.
Okay. So is there a formal boycott underway at this point in time?
I don't know of a formal one, but it's kind of ongoing. More and more people are stopping buying the product. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right. And with Driscoll's being such a large player in the global market for a lot of these products produced in Pajaro Valley, have you had any interaction or reaction from them?
Adam and one other, Carolyn from Charlie Hong Kong's, met with Miles Ryder recently, and I heard it went really well. Generally, I met with them, a few years ago, and generally they say, yes, we're interested in going toward organic, blah, 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 but then you don't see the results. Mm-hmm. That's the thing, and we want results. We don't want just lip service. Yeah.
Yes. Lip service is an issue in our country, it seems.
Yes,
where there's a lot of talk about, we're going to fix this, and then what actually happens is counterproductive.
Sometimes worse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And is there, for the efforts that different organizations are putting into this, are local residents in the area also trying to address the situation, and how are they trying to deal with this?
Well, when they're knowledgeable, see, that's the key. There's a lot of misinformation and also just lack of information. And that's what our role in Center for Farm Worker Families is to inform the public about the dangers and what we need to be doing, and organizing people.
I have heard testimony that from farm workers themselves that were applying pesticides, that they were, told to wear the required protective gear and so forth, but they were never told what the pesticide was,
right,
what its potential hazards were,
right,
the sort of general common sense precautions one should take. Okay, it's great you're wearing gloves and a mask and whatever it happened to be, but they weren't told really why or what to watch out for in terms
right,
of symptoms that might come up if they were exposed to the stuff.
Right.
And I wondered, is that something that the state regulates? How does that work? And is there any way for that? I mean, obviously, just stopping use of the pesticides would address that issue.
Right.
But in the short term, it seems like there's also a lack of follow through, I'll say to be kind, in terms of actually educating the people who are dealing with these substances as to how to protect themselves and their families.
When I first started doing my research, I asked farm workers to ask the supervisor what they were using in the field. I would do the research to find out how they could protect themselves, and then we go from there. And I have never met a farm worker that knows specifically what the chemical is that they're being exposed to. There's no oversight on these farms. Women get raped, women get groped, harassed. When it's 108 in the field and people start fainting, sometimes supervisors won't let people go, and they end up being taken to the hospital in an ambulance. I've heard many stories like this. So everything is kept hush-hush and basically quiet, so that they can continue to do their practices, which are so destructive to people.
And I understand a lot of the farms use labor contractors, so the actual entity that's the grower in a particular case may not actually have any direct interaction with the workers anyway.
Right.
They're just going to a labor contractor, and then labor contractors are often really taking advantage of people, because I've also heard of stories of people simply not getting paid.
That's right.
And I've had guests on this program who has done research on wage theft,
Yes.
which is a multi-billion-dollar issue in the United States.
Yep.
And the majority of the victims of wage theft are migrants and farm workers. Right?
Exactly.
So it kind of underscores what you're saying about it being a kind of a closed system where there's no accountability, there's no
Right.
transparency.
Right.
You're not really getting the full reports of what's going on.
Absolutely. And why can't the people who are exposed to these pesticides know what they're being exposed to and have, a form or a sheet or something that tells them how to protect themselves? Why can't they have that? Yeah.
That seems like a no-brainer. And then, of course, if the fields are converted and they're no longer using these toxic synthetic chemicals, then obviously that benefits not just the farm workers, but the schools, the neighbors, the soil, the birds, the insects, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The food we eat.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Okay. Well, so here we are. We have a system where still the vast majority of the agriculture in the Pajaro Valley and the surrounding areas is still using chemical pesticides, chemical fertilizers, some herbicides as well. And a lot of this, though, is, as we've been discussing, right next to where people live, right
Yep.
next to where children who we know biologically are more susceptible to the effects of these chemicals.
Right.
And yet they're continuing to be exposed. Where would you, if you were to envision where we should be in a year, what would you like to see?
I would like to see all of us wave a magic wand, get rid of the pesticides, convert all the farms to organic, regenerative, and I would like to be sitting in one of these beautiful green reformed farms eating an apple. That would be my dream come true.
That's a beautiful vision.
But take care of these children. I mean, I don't think people realize, maybe the farmers that use this stuff don't realize what it's doing to children. How uncivilized can you get? I mean, really. Sending children to Stanford for leukemia treatments? Hello? Yeah.
Yeah, and these are things that they can treat it, but they don't have a cure.
That's right. Yeah, forgive my rant. I've seen so much suffering. It really hurts my soul. And whenever anybody puts out a little information like that, I just go off.
Yeah. Well, we just have just a little over a minute left. And I want to first thank you for coming in and sharing your work. And let our listeners know how they can find out more, how they can sign up for a farm worker reality tour, for example, how they can get involved in this campaign to eliminate pesticide use around our schools and homes.
Yes. Well, go to our website, farmworkerfamily.org, and we have farm worker reality tours listed that people can sign up for. Generally, we do one for a minimum of 10 people, but we have some already scheduled in the coming year even. So I think that becoming informed is key. And then being an agent of organization and organize your, inform your neighbors. This is what's happening. This is what we're being exposed to. Let's do X. Shall we go to the city council meeting? Shall we go to write an article about it? Do something, even if it's wrong. Just do it. Yes. And remember, these are biocides. Your pets can be involved in this and killed by these chemicals. I mean, yeah, it destroys the environment. We don't need them, so let's get rid of them.
Yeah, and we already know there's, ecologically speaking, we have a huge collapse of the population of insects globally and a huge collapse of the population of birds. And all of these creatures play a role in keeping things in balance.
Totally.
And we're putting ourselves and our future at risk.
That's right. You're absolutely right.
Well, Ann Lopez, it's been a real pleasure. Thank you again for coming in and being on Talk of the Bay.
Thank you so much for inviting me.